Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another MC Radio Show episode. I think it's episode 12 or 13. I think it's 13. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another one of these. I am your humble host, Mike Camo, here for the MC Radio Show. As MC stands for Mike Camo Radio Show. It's a little different. Actually, you can either call it Mike Camo Radio, the Mike Camo Radio Show, or the Mass, or the Mass Communication Radio Show, because I'm trying to show my communications throughout the world. I think as of right now, guys, thank you for all the views. I think we're up to 491 or something like that. I haven't checked in a little while, but yes. So, I'm not here to pout and talk about my day. My day was great, did good. I'll talk to you guys about my weekend, Monday or Wednesday. Today is actually a very, well, not very special day, but it's actually an anniversary day. And it's actually not a very happy anniversary, but it is an anniversary, and nonetheless, today is the fourth anniversary of my grandfather's passing. My grandfather, Joseph Anthony Dominicucci, G-A-D, Jad, Joseph Anthony Dominicucci. My grandfather was born in November of 1928. No, not November of 1928. November of 1929. Right after the stock market crash, actually. So my grandfather was actually a Depression-era kid, and from the stories he told me, he was a very special person. He learned a lot from his father, Antonio, my great-grandfather, Antonio Dominicucci. And he taught my grandfather a lot. My grandfather had to learn a lot when he was a little kid, because he grew up in a time when you didn't have a lot of money and you bartered for stuff. I remember him telling me how they collect copper, metal, newspapers. My grandfather said they collect newspapers and barter with those, or they'd use it for fire starters, whatever, to sell, to barter with if people needed it, because everybody needed different goods for different things, because no one had money to buy anything. So there's always somebody in the village, somebody in the town or village that my grandfather was in here in Massachusetts. I think it was mostly, not village, but town in Massachusetts. And my grandfather said that his father was always collecting things and making sure that he had stuff, because you never knew who wanted something. You never knew somebody who wanted copper parts or car this, car that. And he always was a collector. So my grandfather learned early on that, you have to collect certain things, and you have to know the value of certain things beyond what they are. And a lot of people around me don't understand when I'm saving something like a car magazine or something. A lot of people are like, that something or everything has a sentimental value to something. So that's the reason why certain material possessions make you feel good, even though I don't think a game system is really material. There's more material. It doesn't really have any significance, but it does actually have some use, because it's entertainment. It's useful for your imagination, I guess, as my grandfather would say. That helps generate imagination. But certain things like window frames, copper pipes, and everything else, and these were all used to barter with, to get a gallon of milk from somebody, or bread or something like that, because somebody always needed something, because they wanted. And people in my grandfather's town used to do this all the time, and they do the same thing vice versa. And my grandfather had a system. my great grandfather had a system on what to keep, what to collect, and what not to, and what to throw out. Um, so you're, so the stuff you collect isn't always bad. And I think my dad does that too, because I think my grandfather taught my dad a few things here and there, that everything is useful and don't throw everything away because you don't know when you're ever going to need it. And everything. So my grandfather was always keep what you need and then toss the rest. Don't live in excess, because you never know when you're going to have to dump that in order to get something you want. And I'm pretty sure I'd love to do that with some of my material possessions. And at some point in my life, I'll have to make sure I remember that. And I think it's good because my grandfather taught me you don't know how good you have it till you've lost everything. And my grandfather's right. He was a very wise man, always wise with advice. He always taught me, he always had a war story or something to teach me. I'd always ask him a bunch of questions. Now, some things about my grandfather, he was a war veteran. He was actually a bombardier in the Korean War. He served from 51 to 50, I think from 50 to 53, and then he married my grandmother at 54. And that is a marriage that was a lifelong journey. The journey that carried him up to his not so great death, not so great and unexpected death in 2015. We didn't want to see him go, but he went anyway. So my grandfather and my grandmother were married for 60 years, from 61 years, from 1954 all the way to 2015. So 61 years, very long marriage. I know there's marriages that are longer than that, but I know there's marriages like 67 years, but yes, and my grandfather, and I always ask my grandfather how you make it work, how he made it work for 60 years. And he taught me one thing. He says, Mike, you have to make the girl feel special. And that's a maximum that I've actually carried with a lot of the girls I knew. More than others. Now I didn't get too much back then when I was a younger kid, but now I know, after listening to him, that I have to cherish the moments. That's the reason why I cherish my friendships. I think Grandpa was the reason why I cherish my friendships, and I fight for my friendships and keep them going with the women in my life. Like my mom. My mom's always going to be a friend to me. Going to be a good friend and teacher. Megan, who I've known for 15 years. Treated her special. Make sure she's well treated. I'm not rude. April, April. She's more of a different case. I'm more of the challengey type towards her, but I think Grandpa would get that. But I always kept her on, and I always keep her on the edge because she kind of needs it and she likes it. But I always made her feel like she was always. But it's down to the maximum of how I make the girls feel special. And that's something I'll keep on cherishing. And I hope for one day I meet the girl that I can settle down with for the rest of my life. Which, I feel could happen any day. Who knows? I could run into the girl I meet tomorrow. Who knows? But, he was very instrumental in a lot of my teachings. And I actually learned a lot more talking to him over the years. Now, I used to visit every once in a blue moon when I was a kid. And I still visited for years. One thing that my grandfather was always into was because he was a war veteran, is he was actually into firearms, and my grandfather believed in the Second Amendment. So that's where I kind of get the Second Amendment from. Because my grandfather believed in the Second Amendment, and I believe in the Second Amendment. That's the reason why I believe in it, because of him. because he's the one who actually taught me how to shoot, actually. My dad has crafted my skills over the years, but Grandpa is actually the one who actually got me into shooting, actually. Starting with a pellet gun back in the day. I think I remember... I think I remember seeing my grandfather using a pellet gun back in our camping days, even though I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a real rifle, actually. But I soon learned that it was real. It was not real. And I remember taking my first shots down in his basement, even though I should not really be saying that. Took the first shots of my life in my basement with his Daisy 880. And Grandpa, thank you if you're up there, because I know you are. Thank you for that. I probably wouldn't be in the Second Amendment if it wasn't for you. He was very into the Second Amendment. He believed to arm yourself and know how to shoot. It was a skill that you needed to learn. It's unfortunately a skill that has fallen on deaf ears because of all the shootings and stuff. And unfortunately, some of our politicians, I won't name names, want to kill them because, and my grandfather thought it was a bunch of baloney, and he never watched the news after a while because he knew that news was news and politicians just were there to get your vote, and he knew not to get caught up in that hoopla because he was a wise guy. Very wise man, not a wise guy. He was a wise man. Although he could be a wise guy when he could be, in his age. So, he taught me how to work hard, how to work efficiently, how to be nice to your managers, your bosses. And I've already told you guys the pay raise fiasco, and he taught me that, with a guy. If you guys don't want to know, it's a story I told earlier this year when I was helping April out, and it was the one where his buddy wanted a pay raise. My grandpa told him no. Guy said, "I'm just going to do it anyway," when he gets fired and everything like that. And that was a very interesting story, and I think he told me that not too long ago. I think he told me that back in 2009 or 10. I think he told me that back actually in 2009 or 2010. I forget what but it was early 2010s. They told me that story. I remember going over the house all the time. They would always cook dinner, usually be spaghetti meatballs. And we used to spend a lot of time over there. I remember we spent a lot of time over at his house, and he was always teaching us something, taking something apart, or putting one of his ships together, because my grandfather was great with his hands. There's one guy who was very good with his hands. It was my grandfather. He could build ships like no one's business. Few of my uncles took up the shipbuilding, the wood shipbuilding business, hobby to heart, and followed in their footsteps. I have not constructed a model in my life, but Grandpa, one of these days, I'm going to set aside time and I'm actually going to do it. Don't quote me on that one, but I will actually find a model set and I will put one together so I can continue your tradition. But I'm always about building things up, whether it's helping out. But I do build people up in my own way through motivation and stuff. But Grandpa, I will try to build a model kit one of these days, and I will try to build something on my own. Who knows? Maybe I'll build the car. My grandfather was a mechanic, as I mentioned. He was a tiller. He was a tiller in the fire department and various other jobs. And my grandfather was a firefighter for many, many years. Something my brother took on. My brother's now an EMT, so he took that into account. My brother does that amazingly well, and he has my grandfather's spirit in him with that one. So yeah, and yeah, those, and we enjoyed Christmases together and times together. Unfortunately, um, we time unfortunately was slowly crawling past. In 2012, I think it was right after my um, 2012. I think it was right after my graduation. Well, actually, no, it was not right after my graduation. Um, it was right before my graduation in 2012. I think it was like spring. That my grandfather started having problems with his heart, and this saga would go on for 3 years, and um, it would ultimately, um, and well, we actually didn't know what would happen because we want him to live forever and ever and ever. After that, my mother, her brothers and sisters all pitched in to help him out, keep him alive, because we wanted to see him live as long as he could. At the time, my grandfather was 80. At the time, 2015 to 2012, 3 years. He would have been 86. So my grandfather was 83 at the time. And we knew there and then with the heart problems that, we didn't know what was going to happen, but we had a feeling that that his time on earth was going to be very limited, and we didn't know how long. So right after that, I mean, I used to visit him all the time, but right after that, I visited him a heck of a lot more. I had this pact with God, I think, after my grandmother died back in 2006. I spent a lot of time, tried to say hi to her, and tried to come over, but there's nothing I could have done because I was busy with school and everything, but I made a pledge that I would visit my grandfather whenever I could. So from 2012 to 2015, October, I ended up visiting my grandfather every chance I got. I'd ask him about the war, his time in Japan, because my grandfather had a base in Japan. I used to ask him war stories, life advice, how long you stay married. He showed me photos and everything. He always had something to do. And when he'd greet me in something Italian. Just a relatively great guy. He was trying to throw all his energy because he knew he didn't have any. He knew for some odd reason he didn't have any time. His time was limited. He just didn't know how much. So he gave every ounce of energy he had into teaching everybody everything, and it inspired. In that short time, it inspired my. It actually inspired my time to inspired my cousin Allie to actually become a teacher. She's actually a teacher in special needs kids, and my grandfather was always somebody who was compassionate and always gave the shirt off the back, always gave them advice, that sort of thing. So that's what Allie did. I was studying psychology at the time because I wanted to help people, and I still am. And I'm still doing the greater good today, even though I need to be moving out of Target very soon. And Grandpa, I think I will at some point. And I'd always ask him questions and everything. And in between then, he was hospitalized many, many times. He got in one Easter one time. 2013, he got one Easter in. And then 2014, he didn't come in because he was too sick. And we all took turns visiting him because he visited the emergency room many, many times. Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center was his saving grace many, many times. He had many surgeries, tried to keep him alive, tried to get a lot of fluid in his lungs. He was very, very, it was like that, and quite frankly, he was chugging, and then one day, he ended up slipping, breaking his foot, fracturing it, and his body really couldn't fight after that. So this was probably September 27th. This was probably September 26th, September 27th. And I was actually sick the week it happened. And I tried to fight off the illness. I went to bed early. I studied like hell. I tried to work hard, so I could actually focus on going to actually see him instead of I did all my schoolwork early to try to go see him and not get sidetracked with that. And unfortunately, the days rolled around and they said he has less than this much time to live. And then eventually the foot got progressively worse. And unfortunately, it got so bad that the last 4 days of his life were absolutely tear-jerking. And we kind of knew that would be it. So I'm actually going to pause this and start a new video. This is going to be 2 videos. This is going to be a Power Director, so I'm going to cut you guys for now. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I just want to say, guys, that, yeah, what ended up happening after that was his health fell completely down, and it was kind of hard to see. I told my grandfather, I said, Grandpa, I've been sick. I couldn't come in. I tried to rush to come in here, and he says, you don't have to rush. God doesn't want you to rush. You get here on your own time and everything else. And in that time, he said something that would absolutely, he said something that made me tear up and inside a little bit. And he would say, and I said, Grandpa, you've been a great, and he says, Mike, you've been a great grandson. Very dedicated. You'll go into well in life. I told him, Grandpa, you've been a great grandfather. I've learned a lot. And in your next life, I hope you find many people like me. 2 days later, they put him on morphine. I think it was Saturday the 3rd. They put him on morphine. I remember seeing him at 6 o'clock on October 3rd, Saturday, October 3rd. I stayed till about 11 o'clock. And I must have bawled my eyes out. Everybody was. And I said, Grandpa, it's me, Mike. And he knew it was me because he was laughing a little bit. And he just sit there. He was being sedated by the morphine, and they wanted him to pass away peacefully. And I remember at one point my mother asking everybody to get out of the room because my mother was tearing up because, for God's sake, it was the man who gave her life, practically. And taught her many, many things, which is why my mother is a healer and a very compassionate human being because of her, because of him. I said a prayer to him, and and 11 o'clock, I went home, went to bed, and $12 midnight, a new day came around. God let him live for another 6.5 hours. At 6:13 a.m., my grandfather, Joseph Donacucci, passed away. Passed away of heart-related issues. And we were all devastated. We couldn't believe it. I literally wanted to cry, but I knew I had to go into work that day. And what did I do in his honor? I did exactly what he wanted me to do, and that was to work 100%. Because he would have wanted me to. He wouldn't have wanted me to worry. And I dedicated the whole day to Grandpa. And I remember Terry, my boss, coming up to me that day, and she goes, You are absolutely, I can't believe you powered through that. And I'm like, Terry, I don't know how I did, but I know he wanted me to. And he knew I could do it. And then, I believe it was two days later, Tuesday. I believe it was Friday the 10th. Friday the 10th, we officially laid him to rest. Joseph Yamaguchi, from November 1928 to October 4th, 2015. My grandfather never wasted a minute. With finite time, he never wasted a minute. He always spent doing something. Always had his hands full. Always was constructing something. And always helping somebody, giving somebody advice. And he still powers me today. Grandpa Joe Dom, that's what we used to call him. Let your spirit rest in heaven. And shower us with your love and your strength when we need it most. And God bless you for your soul. And God, I hope you have one heck of a companion up there to keep order. Because I know he would. All right, everybody. I think that's enough for me. Mike Camo here for a tribute to my grandfather, Joseph Anthony Dominicucci, here on October 4th, 2019, here for Day of Entry, or episode 12. It's a fitting legacy of a man that lived life to the fullest, never wasted a minute, and with infinite time and in eternity, we can only imagine what he could do. Grandpa Joe Dom, my prayers are with you always. A good man, a teacher, a husband, a motivator, a friend, a great storyteller, and everything else. And I'll have to tell you guys some of those stories on Monday, maybe. Good night, everybody. And this has been another MC Radio Show episode dedicated to my great-grandfather, not only to my great-grandfather, Anthony Antonio Dominicucci, for giving life to to one of the most amazing human beings I've ever known, and also to my grandfather, for one of the greatest teachers I've ever known. Good night, everybody. And as usual, everybody, long live America. God bless this great nation. Long live our freedoms and our rights. Pray for my grandfather's spirit in heaven, and my grandmother's spirit, and also my grandmother, Nana Dawn. Let her stay strong. Also pray for Thomas, Megan, and April. Let them stay strong. Thank you, Grandpa. Please give them power. Please lend them your strength, as you always did, like me. Good night, everybody. And this ends the broadcast for today. I will see you guys next time for episode 14.